Olá pessoal, boa noite. Bem-vindos, né, a mais um evento, tá, daqui para fora. Hoje a gente vai ter uma infosession bem legal para trazer temas sobre das universidades, sobre a experiência universitária, sobre como é estudar em Minnesota. Acho que tem muita coisa legal aqui que a Holly e a Aimee vão trazer para vocês. Então, meu nome é Felipe, vou fazer uma breve introdução sobre a daqui para fora, e essa parte eu vou fazer em português mesmo, e aí o restante do evento será em inglês. Então, né, aí que alguém, até na parte das dúvidas, quando vocês, né, forem perguntar e tirar de suas dúvidas, né, temas que vocês queiram ver com elas, peço que vocês utilizem o Q&A e que, se possível, enviem as próprias dúvidas em inglês. Se, né, tiver qualquer dificuldade com o tema, pode mandar em português, que eu também vou ficar aqui, né, vou passando para elas, mas para elas responderem direto, acho que é legal vocês passarem diretamente em inglês, tá? Então, uma breve introdução, né, porque, como eu comentei, a gente, né, já faz isso, um novo evento nosso, a gente faz um desse aí pelo menos por semana, mas eu vi que tinha gente nova aqui na lista de inscritos, então vou fazer uma breve introdução sobre a daqui para fora e fazer alguns convites para vocês. Então, né, da nossa parte, né, o nosso trabalho é orientar alunos e famílias nos projetos, né, nas suas applications, nos seus projetos de universidade no exterior. O nosso trabalho é preparar os jovens para os processos seletivos de universidades estrangeiras, né? A gente faz desde 2001, então, né, são 20 anos preparando os jovens para esses projetos, milhares de alunos prepararam conosco, milhares de applications enviadas, então a gente procura entender muito bem o que fazer, como fazer, quando fazer. Muita gente aprovada nas universidades mais competitivas mundo afora, muitas bolsas de estudo também, que é um ponto importante para muitas famílias. Nós trabalhamos com né, um time grande e para atender toda a demanda, né, dos nossos funcionários e trazer todos os temas para a equipe. A gente trabalha com a equipe que, né, a maior parte de nós fez faculdade no exterior, que é importante para orientar alunos e famílias nesse projeto. E, por último, a gente faz trabalho na faculdade de inglês, né? Então, Estados Unidos, Canadá, Reino Unido, Holanda, Austrália, Nova Zelândia são os principais países com as melhores universidades em inglês mundo afora, e que tem diversos exemplos de universidades onde a gente tem alunos admitidos estudando atualmente. E aí eu queria deixar alguns convites. Então, quem, né, chega de falar daqui para fora, quem quiser ir mais a fundo nessa parte daqui para fora, quiser entender como vocês estão em relação às suas applications, podem ficar à vontade ou para enviar uma análise de perfil para a gente, né? É só responder essas perguntas para a gente dar um feedback sobre como você está em relação ao processo seletivo, onde você precisa melhorar, onde você já está bem desenvolvido. Você pode agendar um atendimento também conosco, com um dos nossos especialistas, para falar especificamente do seu caso, e ainda deixo aqui também o convite para os próximos eventos que a gente tem. A gente vai falar semana que vem, com um aluno nosso que está no seu primeiro semestre em UCLA, vai contar como está a adaptação, como estão os primeiros meses de aula, como foi a preparação também. No segundo, a gente vai falar sobre trazer alguns pontos para entender que tipo de universidade vale a pena ou não, né? Para muita gente fica em dúvida em estudar fora. Então, se não for uma V-League, não vale a pena, será mesmo? Então, a gente vai trazer alguns pontos para vocês refletirem em cima disso. E também um outro aluno nosso, isso na University of Kentucky, também vai trazer as experiências dele no dia 10 de outubro. Então, fica o convite, eu vou mandar todos esses links aqui no chat para vocês. E vamos ao que interessa, que é com as nossas convidadas super especiais de hoje. Deixa eu tirar aqui a minha tela. Holly, Aimee, welcome. It's always a pleasure to have you guys here. We were speaking before we start here that you guys know the drill. You have been doing it with us for a while, quite a while now, and it's always a pleasure to have you guys and share information about the college experience, applications, and how it is to nice study in Minnesota, in Carleton. So it's always a pleasure to have you guys here. I thank you so much for taking the time, taking the effort to share your experience with our students. So guys, as I said, they work with this part of the process, like recruiting students here from Brazil. So they have a lot to share of information about them for you guys. So I hope you guys enjoy. I'll sit back on the backstage now, and I'll be back for the Q&A in case you need. All right. So Holly, go ahead. Show is yours.
Muito obrigada, Felipe. Hello, everyone. Boa tarde, boa noite. Thank you for having us here today. We are really excited to be able to speak with all of you at Aqui Pra Fora. And specifically, we want to talk about the diversity of institutions in the USA, and beyond that, some of the benefits that come from our shared place. And so Aimee and I are going to talk a lot today about Minnesota as a state, as a place to live, as a place to explore and have fun. And I want to acknowledge that we are just two of the many options within the state of Minnesota, but we are hoping that we help illustrate why you might want to move to Minnesota. My name is Holly Buttrey, meu nome é Holly, and I work with Carleton College. I'm an associate dean of admissions, and I recruit students from South and Central America. And so I have the opportunity to read your applications. And with me today, Aimee.
Hi, everybody. I'm Aimee Thostenson. I'm the Director of International Student Recruitment at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. And I also have the honor of being the person on staff who meets with high school students, families, guidance counselors, from the wonderful country of Brazil. So we're so sad that we're not with you in person, but we're glad to be here, at least virtually. It's the next best thing. So.
Yes, absolutely. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do now is share my screen so that you all can see our presentation here. And so with this, we want to kind of acknowledge, right, that we have 5 reasons here today to study in the land of 10,000 lakes. And that's what Minnesota is often called because of all of the lakes in our state. I'll turn it to Aimee.
So we are very curious. We know that Minnesota is very, very far away from Brazil, but have you heard things about Minnesota? Anything at all. It could be something good, something maybe that's strange or anything. If you would put it in the chat, we would love to know kind of what your thoughts are and what you've heard about Minnesota. Other than the nickname that it's the land of 10,000 lakes, because Holly just told you that. So that you can't say that. We'll just give it a few minutes. Okay. Natalie has heard that it is very cold. We will definitely talk about our 4-season climate for sure. I hope that's not the only thing you all have heard about Minnesota. Anything else? Have you heard of any of our sports teams? Wondering if there are many Brazilians. Yes, we do have Brazilian people in Minnesota. Yes, the Vikings are our professional football team, American football, I should say. Yeah, there are, I think, about 16 Fortune 500 companies in Minnesota. Yes, sports. We actually have all of the professional sports teams headquartered in Minnesota, and we also have a women's professional basketball team. We love hockey. Ice hockey is probably one of the biggest sports in the state of Minnesota. So you all know, yeah, you have some great ideas about what Minnesota is like. Well, we're going to go on to the next slide and we'll tell you a little bit, some fun facts about Minnesota. So sometimes one of you mentioned the Vikings, and the logo of the Vikings is on here, but other times when I've talked with students from Brazil, they've mentioned that the main character in both the movie Rio and Inside Out was from Minnesota. Yes, exactly, Natalie, you knew it. You knew it, that the main character in Rio. And then, of course, then we have our lovely picture of the woman shoveling snow in the cold winter time. But here are some things you might not know about Minnesota. Did you know that because there are so many lakes in Minnesota, that the state has 90,000 miles of shoreline? That's more than the shoreline in California, Florida, and Hawaii combined. So there are so many beautiful lakes, like little lakes, and then there's a big called Lake Mille Lacs. It's really, really quite large. Another fun fact is the first open heart surgery and the first bone marrow transplant in the United States were done at the University of Minnesota. Forbes magazine once named St. Paul the 2nd cleanest city in the United States and the 5th cleanest in the world. And then Minnesota has more bike trails than any other state. And Minneapolis, where my university is located, is one of the top 2 cities for biking in the whole United States. There's a lot of special bike lanes that are dedicated so that you can ride your bike in traffic. It makes it easy to get around. And Holly's institution, Carleton College, is in Northfield, and that was where the famous bank robber Jesse James was captured in 1876. So those are just some little fun facts that now you know a little bit more about Minnesota as a state.
And it's that place that we want to first talk about, right? We have 5 reasons to move to the land of 10,000 lakes. And the first reason is the place. You can see in these maps where Minnesota is located. We are in the north central part of the United States, and it's really easy to get to other parts of the country for vacation and sightseeing, academic conferences. And there are nearly 200 public and private institutions in the state of Minnesota, including the University of Minnesota and Carleton College. And so when we said there are many options, we really meant there are many options. And so then thinking about how would you get here from Brazil? To fly in, you fly through Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. MSP is our airport code. And this is a Delta hub, and Delta is a partner with Gol Linhas. And so you will see often Gol Linhas and Delta flights being similar. Often you will have a layover from Brazil to Miami, to Chicago, Houston, or Atlanta. So lots of options in terms of flying in. From the airport to get to Northfield, you either will take the bus called Northfield Lines or a super shuttle. It takes about 45 minutes to go from the airport to Carleton College. And then for ground transportation around the Twin Cities, including from the airport to the University of Minnesota, you can use the light rail, which is like our bus or a train system, ride sharing like Uber and Lyft, or take a taxi. And it's less than 20 minutes by ride share or a taxi to go ground transportation from the airport up to the University of Minnesota. And so that was reason number 1, the place.
So reason number 2 is the wide variety of weather and beautiful times of the year that we have. There's a fun saying in Minnesota that if you don't like the weather, just stay a few days and it will be different. So right now we are in the autumn, which is a kind of epitomized by that picture in the lower left part of your screen. It's when all of the leaves on the trees that are green start to turn beautiful shades of red and orange, yellow, and before they fall to the ground. And right now, actually is a beautiful time to go hiking. So a lot of times what people will do is we have about 66 different state parks. So people on the weekend will figure out, there's a special map you can look at. They'll figure out where the fall colors of the leaves are most beautiful. And then they'll go hiking right there so they see all the fall colors. So that's something that's kind of fun to do in the autumn. And then we move into the winter. But I want to tell you that you should not be afraid of the winter, because when you are in your residence hall room or you are in your classroom building, when you're inside, you will not feel cold because we keep all of the buildings nice and warm. You might feel a little bit cold when you walk from, your residence hall to your classroom building. But really the most important thing to remember is you just dress in layers. So if you feel cold, you put on a layer, and if you feel hot, you take off a layer. Plus, the wintertime gives you a lot of really fun things to do. And we already mentioned ice hockey. You can learn how to play ice hockey. This in the top corner, there's a picture of people going snow tubing. That's a super fun thing to do. You can learn to ice skate. And actually some of the parks around, you'll be able to go and rent equipment. So you could rent skis, you can rent snowshoes. so you can get out and see all of the seasons and be in nature. There's also fun festivals, like for example, in the wintertime, we have the St. Paul Winter Carnival, where they'll have a parade, and they'll have ice carving contests and all sorts of fun things to do to get you out and about. They actually have a medallion hunt where they hide like a big coin. They hide it somewhere, and every day in the newspaper they'll put a clue, and the first person to find the medallion wins a big cash prize. So some people are very, very competitive about finding the St. Paul Carnival medallion. And then, of course, when the winter ends, then we have a beautiful green springs, lots of places to explore, especially in the summertime too, because of all of the lakes. It's not going to be like the beach in Rio de Janeiro. It's not like Copacabana. It's not like Ipanema, but we do have smaller beaches, and you can go and rent kayaks, canoes. This summer I rented it's called a paddleboard. So you can get out on the water and really enjoy it and relax and enjoy all of those 4 seasons. So there's so many fun things to do, and you will totally be able to manage the weather. Don't worry, there are Brazilian students in Minnesota, and they are doing just great.
Yes, and another one that you mentioned in the chat, like weather, is all of the companies that are here in Minnesota, right? And so the third reason to study here is the experience you'll have with career experiences on the whole. There are 16 Fortune 500 companies in the state of Minnesota. And those are just the Fortune 500s, right? If you are excited about working at a smaller company, at a nonprofit, if you want to work in local government, understand what that looks like, municipal, state government, all of our institutions, the 2 of ours, and then broadly, those 200 across Minnesota, have phenomenal internship and job placement resources for our students of all backgrounds and all interests. You can see the University of Minnesota has the Career Services Office, Carleton has a Career Center, and we will be working with you throughout your time as a student to help you figure out what comes next. And often that is a career, right? Sometimes it is also going on to a graduate school and applying to a master's or a PhD program. For our non-US citizens, it's a lot of thinking about OPT and how will you use your major for the time immediately following your graduation. And so some of the companies we wanted to highlight here, right, are located in Minneapolis and in St. Paul. And so before we had talked a little bit about ground transportation and kind of the ease of movement around the Twin Cities. And I think that's really important to note here as well. You can get from the University of Minnesota's main campus over in Minneapolis over to the St. Paul campus, Eco Lab, downtown Minneapolis to Target, all on that light rail. And so being able to traverse between these between the university, colleges, and your internships or job placement is really important. And I mentioned internships. That is a lot of what our career services can help with as well. Seeing how do you want to explore different careers during your time as an undergraduate? How do you want to prepare yourself for a career down the road? The career services will be available to you throughout your time at our institutions. And so we will be offering you that full support. And so we know you are coming far from home, and we want to make sure that you are supported both academically, but then also in terms of support to help you realize your goals and achieve those outcomes. So that's reason 3, right? Thinking about your career experiences and opportunities while you are a student.
Reason number 4 to study in the land of 10,000 lakes is affordability. We've pulled this map to show you how the different states kind of line up in terms of cost of living. Now, Minnesota isn't the least expensive state, but it's one of the more affordable states when you compare to, say, the northeast part of the United States and the West Coast, because it's not just the tuition that you're going to be paying, or that your family needs to help you to afford. There's also your housing. Where are you going to live? You're going to need to eat. You're going to need to get around. There's a lot of other things that will sort of occupy your budget. So in the Twin Cities and in greater Minnesota as well, your living expenses will be less expensive. And there might be even ways too, as a student, where you can use your student ID for discounts at local businesses. That is very common. Or you get discounts on computer equipment or supplies and things like that. But I think one of the most important takeaways from this is that when you are researching colleges and universities, always make sure to ask about the total cost of attendance, not just the tuition cost, because it's more than just the tuition. So Holly, did you have anything else that you thought we should add about affordability?
No, I think your last point is one I would just like to really highlight, right? Asking about that total cost, because housing may or may not be included there, right? And housing in New York City is going to be a very different cost than housing here in Minneapolis. I think it's a great point, Aimee. And then our final reason here is fun. Really wanting to highlight that, yes, we know we will be doing so much learning as a student at the University of Minnesota, as a student at Carleton College, or wherever you end up. But we think that fun is also a really important piece. And this ties in a number of our previous reasons as well, right? Thinking about learning how to ski, learning how to snowshoe, to ice skate, that is all available to you during our winter season. Being able to go to professional sports games, whether that's women's basketball and the Lynx, men's basketball, the Timberwolves, the Vikings that I know were mentioned in here, as well as Division I athletics at the University of Minnesota. You can see Goldie the Gopher here, and Division III athletics at Carleton. A number of other places I've highlighted here include the Minnesota State Fair. And so during the summer every year, there is a huge fair, right, where everyone comes together to eat food and go on rides. They call it the Great Minnesota Get Together. And so it's an opportunity for everyone to get together, spend some time together. I think a pretty fun activity for international students to experience. We also have the Mall of America, which is, when it was built at least, the largest mall in the United States. It is so large that there's a theme park inside of it. So you can go shopping, go on the roller coasters, go to the food court, whatever you need there. And then also, I know that someone asked, like, are there a lot of Brazilians in Minnesota? And Aimee's spot on. There are Brazilians here in Minnesota, but there are also so many vibrant immigrant communities here in Minnesota broadly. And that is Somali, Hmong, Brazilian, folks from across Latin America, a lot of like German, Scandinavian migrants as well. And so that's a really exciting and like textured melting pot there. So you can try lots of new foods, but you can also find foods that remind you of home, right? And so really want to highlight that while you will be students, you will also be people at our institutions. And we know that people really need to have fun. And with that, we want to talk a little bit about our institutions, right? And so briefly, I would like to introduce you to Carleton College. We are a small, private, residential liberal arts and sciences institution. Liberal arts and sciences means that you will take classes across disciplines and across many departments in addition to your major. At Carleton, we really focus on that undergraduate experience. We do not have any graduate students. In terms of who comes to Carleton, you will see it's about 10% of our students are international, coming from over 60 countries, and over 72 languages are spoken on campus. We know that there are 72 languages spoken by our students, and then even more by our staff and faculty. Carleton has small class sizes, an emphasis on research, and we do a need-based financial aid model. And so for students who cannot afford that full fee, we provide financial aid based on what your family needs. The final piece that I want to note is that Carleton College has cookies. There are traditions at every single school across the country, and one of Carleton's traditions, and my favorite tradition about Carleton, is we have a cookie house. There is a dedicated space on campus that will always have flour and butter and eggs and chocolate chips where you can go with your friends and bake cookies. The only rule that comes along with this is you have to leave any leftovers there at the cookie house for the next set of people to enjoy. I'm going to share quickly a video about Carleton that I hope helps you understand a little bit more.
There's a place for everyone at Carleton.
The vibe here, it's positive, it's inclusive. I feel like I belong.
We have real conversations about issues that matter.
I've learned a lot about myself just by listening to others.
Classes come first, but we pursue our passions outside of the classroom too.
We work hard and we play hard. It's pretty great.
Climate change can feel really overwhelming, but Carleton offers a lot of ways I can be engaged.
I'm learning how to combine technological and social change to improve sustainability here on campus and beyond.
I'm doing things that will make the world a better place.
I'm part of a community that cares and wants to help me succeed.
My internship really helped me figure out what I'm interested in.
Hands-on experience like that is incredible for an undergrad. I'm already doing what I want to do.
I'm the first in my family to go to college. We never imagined a school like Carleton could be a possibility. But thanks to financial aid, I get to go to one of the best schools in the country. You should hear my parents. They're so proud. You know what? I'm proud of myself too.
And now over to Aimee.
Yeah, thanks so much, Holly. That's a great overview of Carleton, and I am so excited. I love that thing about the cookies. That is super fabulous. I wish we had that at the University of Minnesota. So yeah, so Holly, I don't know, would you like to click the link and we can start off with the University of Minnesota video, and then I'll talk a little bit more? Excellent. Awesome. Thank you so much. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a view of what the University of Minnesota looks like. And some points that I would like to emphasize from what you just saw is that the University of Minnesota is a major research institution, and it's located in the Twin Cities, which is a metropolitan area of about 3.5 million people. There are about 5.5 million people in the whole state of Minnesota. So you can see that this is really one of the major cities in the state. Where the University of Minnesota Twin Cities is the largest university in the state of Minnesota, and also one of the largest universities in the country. We have about 52,000 students total. 5,100 are from our international students from 130 different locations, including Brazil. We have about 80 students from Brazil at the University of Minnesota now, and they are really active. On one of our student groups, we have about 1,000 different student groups, and they have the, it's called BRASA, the Brazilian Student Association in the United States, and it's kind of a branch of the different, there are many branches of this organization at different universities, and they have a fundraiser every year. They sell brigadeiros because although they're not cookies, but they are delicious just the same. And they have a welcome barbecue, so they'll have barbacoa at the beginning of the year and really network with those students. There's the Minnesota International Student Association where you meet other international students, but yes, BRASA gets some love in the chat there from Victoria, yes. So we do have a branch here that is very active. We have about 150 different undergraduate majors that you can choose from. And then when you go on, if you decide you want to do graduate study, there are even more, over 200. So some of the programs that we are most well known for is we have our Carleton School of Management that houses all of our business programs. Our College of Science and Engineering has about 20 different programs from aerospace engineering, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, things like that. Our College of Liberal Arts houses economics, psychology, all the humanities. Our College of Education and Human Development houses things, well, all of our education programs, of course, but sports management, youth studies, which is a pathway to social work. Then there's the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resource Sciences that has pre-veterinary studies, nutrition, plant science, environmental studies. The College of Biological Sciences is one of the few dedicated colleges in the United States that's solely dedicated to the study of different aspects of biology. There are 8 different programs in that. And of course, we have a nursing program as well. But I think the ones listed on your screen are probably the most popular for international students: business, engineering, economics, education, biology, and our design majors, which include architecture. Our total cost of attendance, remember earlier I told you always ask about the total cost of attendance, is about $56,000 per year. However, we do have a partial scholarship program. Our partial scholarships are up to $25,000 for our Global Excellence Scholarship. Those are very competitive, but you don't need to do anything extra to be considered. Then we have some smaller need-based awards up to $5,000 and a research scholarship of $1,700. So we are a major research institution. That's part of the campus community, is we want to connect our faculty members to our students. We have an Office of Undergraduate Research that really makes that bridge between you and maybe a faculty member who is interested in, have the same interests. So if you're interested in research, put that on your application. You can receive the Global Excellence, the need-based, and the research scholarship. So if that is the case, it can cover about half the total cost of attendance. And I think I'll leave it at that. Holly and I are here definitely to answer any questions you might have, either about Minnesota, about our universities in particular. You could even ask us, just general study in the United States questions. We're happy to open it up to whatever you would like to know.
And I think you should feel free to put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. We can see both of those. But I wonder, Aimee, I talked about one of my favorite Carleton traditions. Do you have a favorite University of Minnesota tradition?
Well, I think probably, you know, Holly and I presenting together is kind of like the bookends of like size of institutions. So so I think probably the one tradition that is, well, two traditions that are kind of common for all students to participate in is that big homecoming football game at the beginning of the year when people go to cheer on the Golden Gophers in the big stadium that we have on campus. But then in the spring, there's also something called Spring Jam, which is a big concert that takes place on our Northrop Mall, which is kind of at the heart of the campus. It's a lot of music, a lot of food, a lot of fun, those types of things. But there's an interesting thing on our campus called the shoe tree, and there was a picture of it in the video, but it's nobody really knows how it started, but people will take an old pair of shoes and they'll throw them into this tree. And the idea is that I've heard that if your shoes catch on the tree, you'll get good grades on your final exams that semester. But nobody's really sure why people started throwing all of their shoes in this tree.
I could have used a shoe tree
Yeah.
during undergrad. I have put our videos in the chat and our emails in the chat, so hopefully that is helpful for you all. But again, let us know what kind of questions you have. I don't know, Felipe, if you have any questions that you'd like to answer. But I do see two in the Q&A here. And so the first one, Aimee, is like talking more about scholarships. Do you want to dive into financial aid at the U? And then I'll talk about what need-based looks like at Carleton.
Yeah, so a little bit more about the Global Excellence Scholarships. So I mentioned that they're merit-based. So what that means is that they're based on qualities that you have as a student. So we do something called holistic review. We look at your grades, we look at your test scores, but we also look at your extracurricular activities, any leadership experiences that you've had. We don't require letters of recommendation or an essay, but if you submit those, we read those, especially for scholarship consideration. So, so it's all merit-based, and there's nothing extra that you need to do. You just need to complete your application on time. But for the need-based awards, because we do not collect any information about your family's financial circumstances in the application process, that need-based financial aid there's a separate application where we do ask you questions about your family's financial circumstances. So those are the need-based awards, and those are smaller, usually between $1,000 and $5,000 per year. And then the research scholarship is a smaller scholarship that enables you to work on a research project with a faculty member or propose your own research project. So that's kind of how each scholarship is awarded in a slightly different way based on the purpose of the scholarship. So.
Yes, and Carleton similarly adheres to that holistic review. So we will read the entirety, the whole application that you do submit. We, however, do not have merit-based scholarship. So at Carleton, we are only looking at your need. What can your family afford? And then we cover everything that's up to our comprehensive fee. The Carleton comprehensive fee currently is about $76,000. And so if your family can afford $1,000 US per year, your need is $75,000 US, and that is what Carleton will cover. We do need either the ISFA, the International Student Financial Aid application, or the CSS profile, which is the College Scholarship Search profile, in order to understand what your family's need is. Carleton does have to be need aware in this process. And so please understand that there is a finite amount of dollars within our need-based financial aid for non-US citizens. But you will, if admitted, you will be you will have that full need covered all 4 years. That need-based aid is continued throughout your time. I know there's a question like, oh, what about transfer students? And our need-based aid also applies to transfer students. Again, we do not have merit scholarships on Carleton's end. What about transfer students at the U, Aimee?
Yeah, thanks, Holly. We do have some financial aid and scholarships available for transfer students. It's not as much as for students who are coming straight from high school. So I mentioned the Global Excellence Scholarship for freshmen is as high as $25,000 per year. For transfers, it's a $10,000 is the maximum award. But transfer students can also apply for those need-based awards and the research scholarship. So.
Excellent. And then I think similarly on this like fees side of things, we have a question about application fees and fee waivers. Carleton does not have an application fee, so we do not offer a fee waiver for our application. It is always free to apply. The reason we offer both the ISFA and the CSS profile for students to tell us about their family's financial situation is because the CSS profile does have a submission fee. It's $25 for the first school, 25 US dollars for the first school you applied to, and then $17 every school thereafter. The ISFA does not have a fee to submit to Carleton. And so that's the primary difference between those two forms. And so yeah, no application fee waiver over here because there is no app fee. And then the ISFA is the way to submit your financial documents to Carleton without a fee. But what does that look like at the U?
Yeah, at the University of Minnesota, we do have an application fee of $55, but it is possible to request a waiver. So we accept our own university application. It's called the Golden Gopher application, or you can also submit the common application. And within both of those applications, there are ways to request the application fee waiver.
And what about the SAT or ACT, Aimee?
Yeah, so we do not require the SAT or the ACT. That being said, we do have a English language proficiency requirement. So sometimes if students take the SAT or the ACT and do well in the English section, we can use that in place of another English language exam like the TOEFL or the IELTS or Duolingo, Cambridge Advanced and Pearson's. So those are the ones that we accept, but we do not require the SAT or the ACT.
Yeah, similarly, Carleton does not require the SAT or ACT, but we do require an English language proficiency test. And for us, that is the TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo English exam, just those three though for us. I will note there are some finite minimums that you will need to hit at Carleton. And so those are on the website. But as well, I know like Duolingo, for example, is 120. For TOEFL, it's 100. For IELTS, it's 7.5, 7.5. And so those are minimums for us. And you do need to submit English language proficiency if you have not done 4 years of English as your primary language of instruction in high school. To pivot away just a little bit from applications and fees, talking again about like weather in Minnesota. The first thing that came up in the chat, like I heard it's really cold in Minnesota. So Aimee, how do students acclimate, specifically Brazilians, to the weather here in Minnesota based on what you've seen at the University of Minnesota?
Well, first, I want to make sure that people know that, you know, when you arrive in Minnesota in August, when you step off the airplane, it will not be cold. It will actually be quite warm. Our summers are actually quite warm and humid. So it's sort of this gradual transition between the warm weather we have in August to the colder weather in February. So it's not like one day, you know, it flips a switch and it goes from being warm to cold. But I once heard, and I think this is really true, that it takes your body several years to acclimate to a new climate. So the first winter will probably feel the coldest to you, but once you make it through, you'll be fine, and you will learn like the different ways to get dressed. Because I've also heard a saying that there is no bad weather, there's just bad clothing. And you just want to make sure that you have gloves and a hat, and you can go to the Mall of America and purchase them all there, tax-free clothing and shoes. So you can stock up that way. But dressing in layers really is the key, so that you can help regulate your body temperature. But you'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with what Aimee said here. And I think it's important to remind you, like, we have students coming in from Hawaii, from Florida, from Singapore. And so it's not just Brazilians, right, who will be unaccustomed to the colder temperatures as they slide down. And then also, like, our colleges, our universities are aware that for many of our students, it's going to be the first time they see snow. It's going to be the first time they have to, like, trust that this winter jacket is cold enough. And so, for example, Carleton has a winter wardrobe where our staff and faculty will donate gently used articles of clothing, right? To be like, oh, I'm actually getting myself a new jacket this year. I will donate this jacket to the Carleton winter wardrobe. And so students from Los Angeles, from Sao Paulo, from wherever can go into our winter wardrobe after they realize, like, oh, this coat was not quite warm enough. They can exchange it for like Minnesotan approved clothing that's been worn by staff and faculty previously. But I do think it's pretty fun when students like see their first snowfall. That is a fun experience for those of us who've been living up north for a while.
It's kind of like being in a snow globe. It's like, I think the first snow of the season, everybody gets excited about the first snow. It's a magical thing. So.
Oh, I agree. Aimee, I'm wondering if you have thoughts on submitting SATs and winning a scholarship in the chat.
Oh, right. Yeah. For the University of Minnesota, we don't look at SAT in the scholarship process at all. So it is really truly not required. We grant scholarships to students, international students who don't submit SAT scores. So you don't need to worry about that.
Awesome. Back to Minnesota. What is your favorite Minnesotan food?
That's a tough one because there are so many people from all sorts of places around the world. I mean, if you, there's actually, so one of the things about the Twin Cities is it's kind of known as a foodie town. There are quite a few really top quality restaurants. And one of them is, if you talk about the food that's traditionally from the land in Minnesota, it would be the food that belongs to the native people of Minnesota. And there's a chef called, his name is, I don't know his real name, but his popular name is called the Sioux Chef, but Sioux is spelled S-I-O-U-X, which is the name of one of the traditional tribes that lived in Minnesota. And he has a restaurant in Minneapolis where he only creates food for from traditional ingredients. So it's kind of a really cool and interesting place to go and eat. But actually, I also love Thai food, and there's a lot of really good Thai restaurants. So I think it's not a traditional Minnesota food, but you can get really good Thai food in the Twin Cities. I love it so much. So.
Oh, I like that.
How about you, Holly?
Those are good answers. The first thing that popped to mind for me, admittedly, there's this thing in Minnesota that I had never experienced before moving here that is called a Juicy Lucy. And it is, so you've heard of a cheeseburger, right? You've got a burger, you put cheese on top of it, goes in the bun. The Juicy Lucy changes where the cheese is located. And so the cheese is inside the burger. And so it melts in the meat. And so when you bite it, the cheese is like all melty and juicy. And so I'm not sure that's my favorite necessarily, but I think it is like the most innovative food I have tried. most different from home that I tried here in Minnesota. And I think there's also like a feud between some of the Juicy Lucy restaurants about who created it first. And so that's kind of there's a sense of intrigue there between those restaurants. Yeah, when you all come out to Minnesota, you will then have to let us know what you find most exciting about Minnesotan foods. Felipe, any other questions you'd like us to address?
Yeah, sure. I was listening to you guys here in this time of the year. Our students, our class of 2025, they're working hard for the the last 2-3 months, 4 months to send their applications. And I wanted to hear from you guys. You must be prepared for how many applications are coming, how you guys organize yourselves and to read and get to know all the applicants you have for this season. Just wanted to hear how it's like our side here. Our students are all getting everything ready and sending to your schools. I wanted to hear on your side, how is it the time for preparing and approving the students for the next cycle?
Yeah, so in terms of what we are gearing up towards, we have 3 different deadlines. So we have our November 1st early action 1 deadline. Then we also have a December 1st early action 2 deadline. And then our regular deadline is January 1st. So it's going to be pretty busy for us from November 1st until probably the end of January, because we'll make sure all of those applicants will know the decision by the end of March. By March 31st, anybody who's applied will know the decision, and then they would have until May 1st to decide. So is that kind of what you were getting at, kind of like the timeline, or was there another aspect you were wanting us to highlight?
Yeah, that and how it's like, you tell us what happens. Let me reframe it.
Oh, sure.
What happens after our student clicks submitted? Then
Right.
it comes some fireworks and they
yes,
every
student
side
gets
of the screen.
fireworks. Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
From our computers. But what happens is, so I mentioned the University of Minnesota Twin Cities is quite large. So we have about 4,000 applicants each year that are international students, and over 40,000 applications from students in the United States. So usually what happens is the student hits submit on the application, and then it can actually go through, you might think because we're so big, you don't get very much attention in the admission process. That's not true, because one applicant can have their application read up to 4 times. So different people will make recommendations, and then once a student is admitted, then they would go on to that scholarship consideration, which is another process. So students will know the admission decision first, and then the scholarship decision will follow later. So Holly, how does it work for you at Carleton?
Yeah, we have slightly different deadlines. So Carleton is an early decision school. So those are binding decisions, November 15 and January 15. Those are early decision 1, early decision 2. January 15 is also our regular decision deadline, that non-binding deadline. Early decision students, if you're applying early, will be notified within a month of what our decision is for that student. And with our decisions, you will receive your financial aid award. So a little different in terms of the timeline there as well. But similarly, we are gearing up for our November 15th deadline. 4 times is an incredible number, Aimee. I love that. Here at Carleton, your application will be read twice. You have a first reader, that is me. You have a second reader, will be one of my colleagues. We each make a recommendation on your application, and then it goes to committee. And then there's a small group of us who are versed in international applications on the whole. And we as a committee then advocate for students in that space. And so no individual gets to make the final decision. I think that's probably important to know, is that when your application goes poofing, there are fireworks, right? We then, as Aimee highlighted, and as I'm trying to describe, is there are a lot of us who get our eyes on that application, who offer advocacy on your behalf and are there to help steward your application through our process. The same deadline, however, to what Aimee outlined, right? All of our students will know by the end of March what our decision is. Once admitted, you will have until May 1st to decide. And so I think that May 1 deadline is super important to highlight here. There are two more questions I see here in the Q&A, the first of which are study abroad opportunities. Understanding that if you are a Brazilian student coming to the US, that's kind of a study abroad in itself. But Aimee, what does study abroad, off-campus studies, what does that look like at the University of Minnesota?
Yeah, we definitely encourage our international students to study abroad. And in fact, for the Carleton School of Management, those programs actually have either a semester or a year built into the study plan for students to study abroad, because they feel it's so important to get that international business experience. All of the other programs allow for study abroad too. You work with your academic advisor. So maybe you want to spend a semester in London, or maybe you want to spend a semester in the Galapagos Islands or something like that. You can definitely make that work, because partially because the system is so flexible. So there's ways that you can move classes around and build that as part of your experience, especially if you talk with your academic advisor. Each student gets an academic advisor. If you talk with them early on, they can help you plan for whatever study abroad experience you might want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that word flexibility is so important. Similarly, Carleton offers, I feel like it's funny, Carlson at the University of Minnesota, Carleton here in Northfield. And Carleton has a similar flexibility where students are able to study abroad any point after their first year. We run on a trimester calendar, which means we have 3 terms per year rather than 2 semesters. We have 3 trimesters. And there are study abroad opportunities on each of those trimesters with Carleton faculty. You can also do a non-Carleton study abroad program during fall semester. So lots of opportunities there. Some students will find ways to study abroad over the summer, over winter break, maybe in the spring. But generally it's on our trimesters or that fall semester. It's about 70% of Carleton students do choose to do a study abroad program. I have to say, students get really excited to go to Australia during winter, right? And so thinking about how you might plan that in. Similarly, you'll have a liberal arts advisor your first 2 years who will help you navigate the off-campus study opportunities. You'll have a major advisor once you declare that major. We have an off-campus studies office there to help with advising on different programs, help you through that application process. And then I'll finally note that in terms of study abroad at Carleton, is your financial aid does travel with you for one non-Carleton study abroad program and for all of your Carleton off-campus studies programs. And so hopefully that affordability piece can make it possible for students to study abroad during their 4 years, right? We have another question that's, can we find Brazilian food somewhere? Yes. I don't know, Aimee, what your spot is. I like samba. Over near Buttrey is a spot that I like, but what about you?
Well, I mean, the big one is Segurança, but that's the big chain. So actually what I saw the question, so I cheated a little bit and I looked up, I Googled best Brazilian restaurants in Minneapolis. And so I found the top 10. I'm going to put that in the.
Did samba make the top 10?
Let me just check here. I'm going to copy it here first and we'll see where samba landed in the let's see. Oh no,
it doesn't look like it did. It's my personal preference, but not the preference of Yelp, apparently.
I guess not. I'm sorry to report that. Where is Samba? Did you say?
It's over by like
Bidema-Costa. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
nice.
Yeah.
That's also by one of the lakes in the Twin Cities.
Yes.
Is it barbecue as well? Because it seems like people, they're just gonna select barbecue restaurants.
Kind of. I think it has more to it than that, right? Like what I remember is I was able to find coxinhas at Samba, and I was like, so maybe that's really all it was, right? It's like the one restaurant where I was able to find like my little coxinhas. But I do also want to mention there are some really phenomenal grocery stores up here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And so like if you are seeking like that tapioca to make your pão de queijo, you can find that, right? And through all of these student organizations like Braza over at the U, at Carleton, we have our Latin American student organization, and then the Brazilians will often do like little bate-papos, and they'll bring desserts or snacks that they've made. And so they will sometimes be like, Holly, can you please pick up just like a bag of like the tapioca in order for us to make this? And so I also want to make sure you understand, like if you want to cook your own food, that's also available. Yes.
And Holly, I think from what you have told me too, it's pretty common for students to come up to the Twin Cities on the weekends and so forth, because it's actually not that far away. Yeah, so I think so for students who want to come up to the Twin Cities and visit those Brazilian restaurants, it's definitely something you can do in the day.
Certainly, yeah, great point. Mm-hmm. I don't see other questions in the chat or Q&A. Felipe, I'll turn it to you. What would be helpful and in terms of how we end this today?
Yeah, that's all. I would say just your closing words, any piece of advice, or I don't know, things that we haven't mentioned on the event tonight. Feel free to share with our students, and then we're good to go.
Well, I think Holly and I will tell you there are over 4,000 universities in the United States. So there's a lot of research to be done, but always know that universities that are really serious about having international students as part of their communities will have people in my role and Holly's role that are there to help you. And that's really what we're here for. You should never feel shy about asking your questions, reaching out, because as even between the two of us, the way we have different policies, it's a confusing process, and you have your advisors through Daqui para Fora, but if there are other things that you want to know, you can always reach out to us too, because we're all here together to make it less confusing for you.
Yes, I agree. I will also say we are here to get to know you as students, right? I think there is often a guessing game, like what do they want to read in my application? And what we want to read is who you are. And so that piece of authenticity and being yourself throughout the application process is really what I would encourage you to do, right? Stay true to yourself. Let us know who you are, what you like. Even if other people don't like that same thing, we want to know what you like and why you like it. And so making sure that you don't try to guess what we want to read, because we are going to read everything. And so what really helps us get to know you through your application is you being authentic and true to yourself. And I think lots of ways you can figure out, is the University of Minnesota the best place for me, is by asking those questions and really thinking and doing some self-reflection. So I think that is my offering today. And I want to thank you all again for your time today. It was a real pleasure, prazer, to present with all of you today.
Oh, thank you, Holly. Thank you, Aimee. It's always a pleasure to have you sharing your experiences and information with our students. So I hope you have a great week. And people that are here that listen to Holly and Aimee should consider sending their applications and knowing more about their universities. All right. So, ciao.
Ciao.
Boa noite, ciao.